Welcome to Licensed Poetics, a podcast about creative storytelling. I'm your host, Fang Ling. And today it's just me from the Licensed Poetics team because Ahim, my co-host, is taking some time off to go traveling and to focus on his creative projects. But I have two guests with me here in the studio, Emily and Anya. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you for having
Very
us.
excited.
Thank you so much for coming. I'll briefly talk about how I met each of you. Emily and I met at an audiobook launch event where my short story was published in an audiobook anthology, and I was there to do a reading. And Emily was the facilitator slash
Just like
sound.
producer.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually ended up not doing any sound on that, which felt weird. But yeah, that was
how we met. And then Anya and I met at a mutual acquaintances film launch party.
Yeah, it's a much less respectable way of meeting.
What do you mean?
It was essentially a house party, and I'm pretty sure the night ended with me throwing up, which I hope nobody saw. But
I did not see.
Yeah, it was a low moment. Yeah. And it's not even because I was drunk. I have zero alcohol tolerance.
Oh my God.
No.
Wasn't even in a fun way.
Well, Emily, you were at the party as well, right?
I was. The party was good. I was severely underdressed at that party, let it be known. I walked in looking disgusting, having come
People
from,
were very dressed up.
and then people were like full face of makeup glam, looking stunning. And then
Yeah.
I was just the hobbit in the corner.
Emily and Anya are both writers slash filmmakers, and I guess today we'll have a more film-focused episode, especially in our second section. So let's jump straight into our reading updates. We'll get that out of the way first. For my reading update this week, I'm talking about a writer rather than a book, and that writer is someone called Czeslaw Milosz. I hope I pronounced that name right. And he's not a writer that you hear about every day in popular culture as much, which is why I only discovered him recently. And I was outraged because I loved his work. And I was like, how have I lived my entire life without hearing about this amazing writer? I think he really deserves to be a more household name, like Sylvia Plath or John Ashbery, as one of the major 20th century poets.
Cool.
So he's a Polish-American poet and writer, and he survived the German occupation of Warsaw during World War II. And when communism threatened his safety, he defected to the West and moved to the United States, where he taught at the University of California, Berkeley. And then because of his background, many of his poems are about like history, revolution, and freedom, and also about immigration and exile. And those are all topics that I'm really, really interested in. And there's this absolutely savage comment on the Poetry Foundation's website about his poetry, about like the difference between Western poetry and poetry from communist societies, like from undemocratic societies.
Right, yeah.
And then the comment goes like, Western poetry is alienated poetry, full of introspective anxiety.
Ooh.
But because of the dictatorial nature of communist government, poets in the East cannot afford to be preoccupied with themselves. They are drawn to write of the larger problems of their society.
I love that.
Oh, I mean,
There's probably some truth to that.
I think that's not entirely inaccurate.
God.
Yeah.
I love that.
It was
Scathing.
savage.
Very savage.
Okay, that's it for my reading update.
Very cool.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing, because I never would have discovered him.
All right, Emily.
Oh gosh. Well, my person is he's from Scotland. So I'm
Nice.
pretty sure it's Alasdair Gray, because it's D-A-I-R,
Okay.
not T-A-I-R.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
I'm really hoping that I've said that right.
Sounds right.
Yeah. So I'm halfway through Poor Things, which most people probably are more familiar with in terms of the movie, with Emma Stone and Mark Ruffalo doing his cute little dancing. I've seen the
he was
trailer.
Is that a new one
incredible
coming
in
out?
Yeah, so it came
So
out
Willem
a couple of months
Dafoe,
ago.
Emma Stone.
Yeah, I've seen
Mark
that everywhere.
Ruffalo. There's a few others, but
exciting.
I don't want to watch all of the previews just because I find they spoil
They
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. It's incredible.
I cannot wait to see it. Yeah. It's sort of told through like the lens of this basically scientist, and he's incredibly working class, and he has at university he's very isolated because of that, because he's studying medicine. But there is another kind of weird scientist. He's very much fits sort of that trope. And they sort of become friends. They're sort of bonded together in that they're both the outliers, or they're both sort of the loners in this like kind of world. And then as he gets to know him, he gets to realize that he's extremely experimental in what he does. And yeah, one of those experiments being taking someone's and bring them back to life. Taking someone's body, bring them back to life. Yeah. Which I won't say how because that will spoil it. I accidentally spoiled it for my friend the other day. But and so this woman, so they call her Bella. She is brought back to life, but has no memory of her original life. So she's sort of wiped clean, and that kind of includes everything from like walking and talking to like social norms and social graces. So it's very interesting to see how she kind of interacts with the world. And then, of course, being so, I guess, innocent and naive isn't, I guess, naive to different things. She's kind of like swindled away by this dude and then gets taken all across Europe, and it's sort of her crazy and wild adventures. But it's sort of told from the perspective of, this original sort of scientist who wants to marry her because he thinks that she's amazing. And it's kind of like, oh, she's like literally born yesterday.
The scientist that created her?
Not the scientist that created her. So it's not quite he sort of loves her too, but he doesn't quite know how to act on his feelings, yet she sort of acts on every single impulse that she has.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so then this other guy sort of like, well, I'll get in. Then this person, well, I'll get in, because she just sort of responds to all kinds of attention and stuff. But
it's similar to the movie, the scientist who like creates her is more of like a father figure, and she refers to him as God.
Yeah.
Which is also like a little bit problematic.
Yeah, like there's some in the book, there's some like slight romantic undertones in parts, which I don't know if
it carries in the movie as well. I think I haven't read the book, but I imagine they've done a brilliant job
of interpreting.
So is it like a love triangle almost?
There is a love triangle, but not with those.
There is, but not with them. Yeah. So you sort of, it's so funny. Like it's very dark humor. Really, very dark humor, very funny. What is interesting, like from what I've seen of the movie, everyone has sort of English accents, but the book is very much set in Scotland, and apparently it is supposed to be a sort of commentary on Scotland versus England in this sort of sense. I don't think it's a commentary on like the desire for independence per se, but just sort of the like disparity between different groups of people. There's definitely a lot of commentary, like class commentary going on in there. So I've heard that the movie doesn't quite touch on that, and a little bit. Some people were, because the author was apparently very pro-independence, so some people I know were a little bit disappointed by that in terms of that not making it into the film adaptation.
I imagine Scottish people were pretty pissed at that because it's set in London. So Scotland isn't even mentioned at all. But Willem Dafoe's character is Scottish. So he's putting on a killer Scottish accent the whole time, but that's kind of the only reference to Scotland.
That's interesting because we have like little street names and this, and it's this building, and it's so...
Is Willem Dafoe the scientist who created?
Yeah, he's God. He's the
and Emma Stone is
Bella.
The girl being resurrected.
The person that's sort of been.
The setup very reminds me of Frankenstein.
It's very Frankenstein-esque.
Very Frankenstein-esque.
But it sounds like it's exploring an entirely different theme to Frankenstein.
I would say, I don't know about the book, but the movie's quite feminist, even though there are some really weird plot lines going on that are problematic. At the end of the day, it is all about Bella. And I watched an interview of Yorgos, the director, saying that in the book it's very much the letters and told from the men's perspective in her life, but that he wanted in the movie for it to be very much Bella's story. So you're just following this girl as she is learning about the world, and
Poor Things is literally starting from scratch. So she has there's not really the same, I guess, influences that there would be on a woman her age that has had a childhood, if that makes sense. Who's had adolescence. Like this person has kind of just been
like
spawned.
Yeah, she changes a lot, whereas Frankenstein kind of stays this tragic figure the whole time. She goes from being this innocent, pure idiot to being kind of the most intelligent person in the whole story.
Story.
Which is a really cool
and coming
arc.
into her own rather than Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds very
in
interesting.
Frankenstein, where it does end in tragedy. Yeah.
And then the book is a series of letters, was it?
So it doesn't start off as a series of letters, but it starts off as somebody finding the letters in an abandoned building.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it's like 100 years later or quite a few decades later, and then he's told to destroy them, but he doesn't. He reads them. So I'm assuming at the end we'll return to that person. But yeah, it goes into this sort of scientist that kind of meets this mysterious guy, and he gets to know him, goes to his house, sort of sees that he's incredibly experimental with his way. He's very secretive, but then slowly but surely he like can't really keep this secret anymore of this woman. And then where I'm up to at the moment is so she essentially gets swindled by this dude. Lovely Mark Ruffalo. His dancing abilities.
Right, okay.
Best role ever
I'm
for
so
Mark
excited
Ruffalo.
to see it because it's just
I hope he
completely
wins
different.
Best Supporting.
Is there dancing in the book as well?
Yeah, once
Okay.
I'm sort of up to the dancing scene there basically, but yeah, he kind of because he's like, great, he just assumes essentially she is just incredibly naive and he will be able to manipulate her, but it kind of completely flips.
Yeah.
And that so he writes this letter back to like God and is like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And it's like, you swindled
What have you created?
And he's trying to, he's like, you swindled me. This was all part of a plan to da-da-da.
Yeah.
And it's really fun. And he thinks it's hilarious because he's like, he obviously took Bella as this absolute fool.
Yeah.
And then now, we're up to Bella's letters. So she's learnt to write. So now she's actually like recording her experiences. So yeah, it sort of starts off with like her trying to write. Like they have like little letters and like little kind of chunks of words and things like that. And so now she's actually able to write. And then she wants to write like Shakespeare. So she does, but then it takes too long. So now she just writes like however she wants to. But it's quite funny because she's sort of developing at a really rapid rate, especially with language. She's really excited by words, and so if there's a word, she'll just write every synonym along with it. So there's like a page where it's just like synonyms for like happy, because she just like writes every single word that she knows. It takes me back to like when I was teaching kids, and I'm like, stop saying good. What's another word? And then we would brainstorm. I was like, oh god, lists of synonyms is too much.
That sounds really
And how
fun,
like
actually.
sexually explicit is the book? Because the film is a lot.
Yeah,
Really?
I've heard the
Yeah.
film is incredibly explicit. Like in terms of descriptions, it's not incredibly graphic. It's all sort of like it is described, but sort of in quite not minimal details. I was kind of expecting, I was thinking, I've heard the movie is like, there's a lot. And then I saw an article with the intimacy coordinator and was talking about like, how extensive all the preparation was so that it was psychologically safe on set. And then
like most of the scenes were closed set scenes.
Yeah, literally.
What does that mean?
It means like only key crew that have to be there because you're doing an intimate scene.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so it's just like minimal people in the room.
less
I
of an
see,
audience. I haven't actually it feels bad to have not even finished the book for the reading updates.
No, that's totally fine.
It's a
I
work in
do it all the
progress.
time,
Work
to be
in
honest.
progress. That is it for my reading update of the book I've only half read. Thank you.
Amazing.
It
Awesome.
counts.
Okay, Anya, it's your turn.
So the books that I've read in the past few weeks include Starve Acre, which is a British folklore horror novel by Andrew Michael Hurley, which is the only physical book I've read. So I'll just start with that. It's a really, really creepy and disturbing book. It's not very big, and I've brought it just because I love the cover. And the reason I read it is because my mum sent it all the way from London, which is a big deal because usually we don't read the same books, but she had just kind of bought it because it was on sale and didn't really know the plot. Again, she literally read it because the cover was cool. And it was like way too scary for what she usually reads. And so went, Anya will absolutely love this.
Yeah.
So she posted it to me. And it's incredible. It's very atmospheric. Like the plot is really drip fed the whole time. You start the story and it's this father, Richard, who's living with his wife, and they're in the English moors. They moved there to raise their kid, and you find out that he's passed away at the age of 5. And you don't really know how he died, but you keep having these flashback scenes where you realize that leading up to the child's death, he kept lashing out in really weird and violent ways. Like he's a really innocent kid, but then one day he'll like come back home with a mouse crushed in his hand. So it's really disturbing because he keeps saying that this character, Jack Gray, is telling him to do all these things.
Ooh, who is Jack Gray?
And so you're kind of like, ooh, it's a weird possession thing going on. And at the same time, in present day, it's the father and the mother dealing with grieving. And the way Richard, our protagonist, deals with it is he's digging out in the moors, just sort of scavenging for whatever he can find. And he finds this rabbit skeleton, which he takes home. And the mother, in the meantime, is just completely delirious. She's just like roaming the rooms of the house, eventually invites these like weird spiritual occultist people into the house to like perform some kind of ritual on her.
Right.
At the same time, this skeletal rabbit that Richard's brought home starts to rebuild itself. So there's all these weird things going on, and the atmosphere just keeps getting weirder and weirder. You then start hearing about old time stories of hangings in the area that were also allegedly caused by Jack Gray making people do weird things.
No.
And so it's just like a really, really interesting and disturbing story that kind of gets under your skin. And yeah, I just absolutely was obsessed. And then I was going to say later on in the podcast that, like, you know, it'd be cool to make it into a movie because that's what we're going to be talking about. Yeah. And I was Googling it on the bus on the way here. Turns out they shot it last year. So they already were onto it. And it's only a few years old. So they must have clocked how much potential it had. Yeah. And so Matt Smith is in it. It's got really good reviews. So I'm gonna watch that one of these days.
Okay, yeah.
Were you thinking you were gonna make it into a movie, but then they got to it first?
Maybe. Well, maybe not me personally, but I was definitely like, someone has to pick up this IP quick. But too late, apparently. So that's what I've read physically. And because I've been driving a lot recently, because this shoot that I'm on is all in Cronulla, and I spend my entire day in the car, I've started reading audiobooks, which I didn't really do before.
Okay.
And again, zero context for any of the books. Basically, I have this poster in my room above my desk that like I bought because it just looked really nice and it has a lot of book covers on it. And I decided, like, as a cool way to decide what to read, I just make my way through this poster that I have. And so, like, completely out of the blue, I just downloaded these 2 books into my Audible. One of them was The Tropic of Cancer by Henry Miller. Again, zero context. So I just start listening to it in the car with my windows down because I like driving with the windows down. It is so sexually explicit. Like, it is pretty much all just about Henry Miller, like his actual life, living in Paris, like visiting all of the brothels.
Wait,
like,
Henry Miller, is he a classic author?
Yeah, it's like quite a famous book, which is why I wanted to read it, but I didn't know anything about it. Yeah, I was so not expecting it. And like every time I'd like pull up to a red light, I'd like slowly roll my window down because I'm like, I am so embarrassed by what I'm listening to right now. Like every single woman in the book is referred to as the C word. It's like so crass.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
And I was researching it. Apparently it was banned in the United States in 1934 for a whole 30 years until they republished it. And I did look up a funny review where somebody called, it was a judge, a Pennsylvania judge, Michael Musmano, in 1966 described Tropic of Cancer as not a book. It is a cesspool, an open sewer, a pit of putrefaction, a slimy gathering of all that is rotten in the debris of human depravity.
I can see that as a Canvas comment, like at a creative writing course, like someone's like, this short story have word.
Really? I would
Oh
be
my
down
God.
for that. I think people are mostly too nice. They need to be
I
more
agree.
savage.
Yeah, I love all of
uni,
that.
It'd be like nice story, colon bracket, like the colon bracket smiley
Yeah.
face, and you'd be like,
Yeah,
It's
that
bad.
means nothing to
that means
me.
it's not
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
You gotta get creative when you're trying to
Yeah.
cause a burn.
I'd always do that.
Absolutely.
What
Have
do you
fun with
like
it.
about it? And they'd be like, oh, and then you're like, okay, so you lied.
They're just like, oh, everything. And I'm like, that
oh,
means
you didn't
nothing.
actually read it, did you?
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Oh, I love that.
I
I'd have that
yeah.
framed. That was my review of my book.
I always wondered what it would be like to listen to a really explicit audiobook because I've
Yeah.
never done that. All the audiobooks I've listened to so far have not been very explicit.
Sure, yeah.
But like I have read plenty of explicit books and always
Yeah.
wondered like how it would translate into the audiobook format.
Yeah, I think it's a whole other level of embarrassment
Yeah.
because it's like a real man who's probably like an established actor or something just like
Yeah.
reading it to me. And I can't help but like think he's the guy in the story. So I'm already kind of hating him
Yeah.
for being so misogynistic about
Oh.
women. It's like, yeah, but mostly it's just the embarrassment of it being so public because like everyone in the vicinity can
And I love
hear
how
what
you
I'm listening
drive with
to.
your windows down. That's
Yeah.
Not anymore
Crank it
after
up.
this book.
Crank it up.
I'm just really intrigued about the title. Why is
yeah.
it called that?
Yeah. I was going to ask that.
I did do a bit of research and I didn't fully understand Henry Miller's explanation, but he was kind of just saying it's about like as much as it is crass and gross, it's kind of about that sort of existence because he's a
Yeah.
poor, starving artist. He's like living in the slums. He's just leeching off of rich people.
Right.
So it's kind of about the like cancerous lifestyle.
So parasitic lifestyle.
Yeah.
He's calling himself a parasite.
Kind of.
Oh, so
yeah.
he's
So
like-
it is self-aware.
Okay.
And it is still enjoyable. Like I still had a great time
Oh.
because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of just hilarious how gross it is.
Yeah. Especially
so
for the time it was
I'd
written.
recommend it. It was a time.
I have many Audible credits.
Yeah,
Ready to
there you
spend.
go.
I know
That's
what
one
I'm
of them
buying
now.
next.
Number one. Just make sure you're on the train though in your head.
Exactly. Make sure the headphones
Make
are
sure your
very
AirPods are
much
on
plugged in.
1%.
My biggest fear is that my wireless headphones would disconnect in my really quiet office.
Oh,
and then
same.
everyone in the
Same,
office
same,
would
same.
hear what I'm like. It would never happen, but I'm just so paranoid that if
Yeah, one day.
Yeah, yeah.
You never
even
know.
if I'm not listening to embarrassing stuff, I just don't want my colleagues to know what I'm listening to.
Oh.
You're just like, oh, and I'm also like, yeah, the like youngest in my office by like at least 10 years. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know that like
Wouldn't go down very well.
Thanks for the great update. What's your next book?
Yeah, the other one was just, again, zero context. I wanted to read an Ernest Hemingway book because I hadn't
Which
really
one?
read one.
uh-huh.
So I, again, downloaded Death in the Afternoon, which was on
Okay.
my poster on my wall. And I start listening to it and it's like all about bullfighting. And then
Oh,
it just
yeah.
keeps going. And I was like, I'm on chapter 5 and he's still talking about bullfighting. Like, what a setup. And then I finally Google it. I'm like, yeah, Ernest Hemingway wrote this nonfiction book about Spanish bullfighting. And I'm like, oh, wow. So this is literally the entire book.
So
It's like reportage.
weird.
And I was not up for that. I don't really do a lot of nonfiction. So probably going to can that one.
He's not
Poor
fun
Ernest.
misogyny either. Can I just say it's boring?
I've heard.
misogyny. It's not
Okay.
fun. I've read one of his books
Which one?
and Farewell to Arms and
I want to read that one. You don't recommend? I haven't read it yet, but
The
let me know.
sigh.
Be honest.
The heavy sigh.
I appreciate why he writes the way he does
Mhm.
because of the being like literally one of the modernist writers.
Yeah.
And having the journalist background.
Yeah, he's very
lean.
and, you know, having the reaction
Yeah.
against the romantics, etc.
Mm.
But like, I just need some adjectives.
Yeah.
once in a while.
I know what you mean. I've
Oh,
read.
I feel like I'm
Yeah.
actually reading like instructions for like operating my dishwasher sometimes. It's very
That's not interesting. Sure.
I've
yeah,
only
that's
read
okay.
The Old Man and the Sea,
Mhm.
and
Right.
I agree with what you're saying. His style is very like blunt and lean,
yeah.
and he does not like any sort of flowery
Not at
descriptive or
all.
even any descriptive stuff.
Not at all, yeah.
Mhm.
But then the good thing about The Old Man and the Sea is that it's really short, so I just went
Yeah.
through it really quickly.
Yeah.
I did like it. I think it's sort of about like man and nature and like man being like really alone with just him and his mind kind of thing.
Mhm.
But there's this hilarious review of The Old Man and the Sea.
Oh my God.
Because the book is just about an old man at sea, right?
It's
No.
the title is
Get
not,
out of town.
And then the review is like, oh my god, stop bitching about it. Just go home and go to McDonald's.
Yeah, literally. It's like those letterbox reviews.
I love
where
that.
they're
That's
like,
a constructive review.
Yeah,
That will
literally.
improve someone's day.
Yeah.
Instead of just being stuck at sea and eating raw fish, just go home and go to
don't
McDonald's.
Yeah,
have to be
come
so-
on.
You don't have to be
Pull
doing
your
all
socks
that.
up.
I feel like reading that book was worth it just to get that
Just
review.
for
you
that
know?
review.
Yeah, that is funny.
All right, I'll read that Ernest Hemingway because I want to read one. It's just I definitely picked the worst one.
A literal nonfiction.
Yeah. It's like I don't care about Spanish bullfighting. It's like a travel guide.
Oh, dude. I mean,
And it's so detailed. It's like, if at noon in Madrid, if you sit in this section of the arena, you'll have sun on your chair from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. And it's like,
my
what
God.
on earth?
It's like an encyclopedia dictionary.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
his hyperfixation. I love it.
And then someone turned it into an audiobook. I respect that effort.
Yeah, imagine
Yeah,
reading
well, it
that.
was kind of calming in a way, just
Okay.
in the car. Like,
Okay.
it's kind of background noise. Just have a
Yeah,
nice
I just-
voice.
Yeah, I thought you wouldn't be embarrassed about that.
No, that one I was like, I'm
Like,
okay
can
with
you
this
bitch
being
over?
public, guys. Maybe
Please
people
switch
will
over.
think I'm going to travel. to
Yeah,
Madrid.
yeah. Or people are like, boo, put the other one back on. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, everyone's just listening with me at the traffic
The
light.
same people that do the same commute every day. They're like, no, put the Paris one back on.
Yeah.
What's the title again?
Death in the Afternoon. And when you Google it, all of the top searches are just a cocktail that is based on the book.
Yeah,
That's
'cause
how
he was-
little people have read the
Was
book.
he like Scotch and like I'd feel like every second book every second page of his book, someone's drinking Scotch.
Well, he was a full-on alcoholic.
Well,
wasn't he?
yeah, like I think.
Yeah, it's a
But
popular
that
cocktail.
title, I get why you would like click on it, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not
It's
like
intriguing. I wouldn't
a book
assume.
about
Absolutely.
Spanish.
I
No!
wouldn't assume it was non-fiction. That's for sure.
It sounds dramatic. It sounds like
Yeah.
a crime thriller
does.
or something. Yeah, spicy. It is not spicy.
Not spicy at all.
Don't read it.
Set in Spain, not spicy.
No.
No spice to be found.
No spice.
Oh god. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's me. That was
Hey.
all my reading updates.
Cool, that was super fun. Thanks everyone.
Yeah.
All right, now let's jump into the second section. Emily James is an emerging writer, director, and producer living and working on Ku-ring-gai and Darugland in Sydney. Her short stories have been published in Australian and international anthologies, including Spineless Wonders Queer as Fiction and the second edition of By All Means by Munich Zine Library. Her first short film, Uninvited, which she wrote, directed, and co-produced, has screened at 12 festivals, both within Australia and overseas, winning the Best Student Film at the Golden Giraffe Film Festival based in France. Emily is currently working as a producer and sound recordist across a number of short films and is co-writing a 6-episode television series entitled Woman vs. Machine. Anya Vallentin is a writer and script supervisor from London. As a screenwriter, she has had several short films shot across England, Australia, and one in Ghana last year. And her second feature, a female-led action flick, is being filmed later this month. As an amateur prose writer, she is currently translating and co-writing her second novel with published Chinese author Zhao Yukun. As a script supervisor, she works on shorts, features, and TV series, most recently Heartbreak High, Second Unit, The Office Australia, and currently the ABC show Plum. But yeah, I would love to hear about the female-led action flick.
I would love to as
If
well.
you can tell us
Yeah.
about it.
So it's called A Woman Scorned, and it's a Manchester film company in the UK that I worked with before last year. And so they wanted me to write this film idea that they had, and they sent me the treatment, which was not great. Like, the thing is with writing on commission is a lot of the time they'll send you something which they think is really detailed. So I'm like, great, I won't have anything to do. And then they send it and it's like, it's just like nothing's there. So I end
Oh,
up having to do
no.
a lot of the actual story building,
Right.
which is fine because I enjoy having the creative control. But it ended up being just a really challenging project. It was super fun because it was the first action script I ever wrote.
Oh, nice.
So did they send you the idea and you developed
yeah.
the script?
So they sent me the
Okay.
treatment for the film.
What's the treatment?
It's kind of like a long-ish summary.
Okay.
It's quite vague. Like a treatment can be as short or as long as you want.
Where the
So
problem
longer than
comes sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes there's even dialogue in there. Like they had laid out some fight scenes, which is why it was misleading because the treatment was a lot of pages, but they were so specific about some of the fight choreography that it just like took up a whole page, which in a script is nothing.
Yeah.
So I had to fill 85 pages, which was a slog. A lot of the time it's just like space bar, every sentence, make it sound dramatic. But I had such a blast writing it because
nice.
my favorite genre of film to watch is action movies. But I never write in it because no one can afford to make action movies.
Yeah, they're so expensive, aren't they?
Yeah,
With all the
very
effects and
expensive.
stuff.
And this one is by no means big budget. So I wrote the first draft. I was so excited about it. I put loads of cool deaths in it, like really creative ways that she could like overpower these guys by using like resources in the house she's in. It's like a cabin in the woods kind of a setup.
Nice. Yeah.
So a lot of tools, like a lot of hammers in the head, that kind of a thing.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I had cool ideas like a propane tank that she finds in the shed, like exploding that. I had all these really fun ideas, and then they come back and they're like, we can't afford to do this, and this, and this.
Propane tank.
Yeah, it was like all my most exciting ideas. They were like, sorry, we just logistically can't do that. So yeah, it's always a bit heartbreaking when that happens. But in general, I just had a blast writing. Yeah.
How do you come up with like these very specific ideas like propane tanks and stuff? Like
It's a lot of researching.
Okay. Yeah.
For that one, I literally texted my dad who makes glass beads in a backyard shed, and he uses gas tanks. And I was like,
that's where the idea
I was like, yeah, I guess that's what spawned it. And I messaged him like, hypothetically, if you left a propane tank open in a sealed room, would you eventually knock someone out / kill someone? And so we kind of puzzled that out together, which is hilarious. And then my search history, like you would honestly think I'm a murderer.
I was going to say, you have to be willing to end up on a list
It's
to be a
honestly,
writer because it's like,
insane. It's like, can you kill someone with a nail gun? Can you duct tape up a bullet wound?
Yeah.
It's like all these insane.
How long does caustic soda take to break a body down? Is one that I have Googled. I could have asked my dad, who was a chemist, but then I'm like, if I ask him that, then does he put me on the list?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Will I be disowned?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a lot of research. A lot of it is like rule of cool. Sometimes you're like, it doesn't matter. This is going to look awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you're going for the
Audiences won't.
image.
Definitely.
Yeah, we're not watching
100%.
a documentary.
That's
Go
very
for it.
interesting.
Yeah, for a low budget action film, it's like whatever. I tried to make it realistic. Like they at one point wanted me to have her snap a character's neck, and I'd written this character as like quite a beefy dude, and I was like, there's no way in hell. And I've started learning jiu-jitsu, so that was kind of fueling my experience. I was like trying to act out the fight scenes in my apartment with my boyfriend, being like, hey Lockie, can you like pretend to like slam my head in the oven door? Like all these crazy things.
Your neighbors are like, what
Yeah.
the fuck?
Like what is going on?
Yeah.
I remember Lucky. He was at the party.
Yeah.
He seemed like a
He's
sweet
so
guy.
He's a real sweetie.
He's
yeah.
so lovely.
Yes. Don't worry, I'm not in an actual abusive relationship.
Yeah.
It was
Neighbours-
for
How will we
work.
know?
And
How
his
will we
neighbours-
know?
and his
If the
neighbours
police
be
go to your
listening.
house, what will they find?
Yeah,
If
exactly.
you're
The evidence is there.
It's okay.
So how long did it take you to write that? Was it 85 pages?
Yeah, so in the end it was 85 pages. Overall, collectively maybe like 6 days.
What?
Are
you serious?
Yeah. Yeah, I spend like half of the days planning and outlining, and then the actual writing of it probably took 3 days. But then they come
I
back
wish.
with revisions because of all
Yeah,
the budget
yeah,
and
Yeah, I
logistical
mean,
things.
but even that as an initial process is just that's insane.
You have to be fast because I'm not getting paid a lot, and
Yeah.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on it.
That makes sense.
That's a good
yeah.
point.
Um,
Yeah, you have to be wise.
I
with
just
how you-
want to get it out. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, and it's genuinely very enjoyable. So when I've cracked the story,
Right, yeah.
I can just
You're on a
bang it
roll.
out quite quickly.
Yeah,
that's
Or at least
you're on a
that's how I
roll.
like to write it. Yeah. What about your series, Emily?
Oh,
Yeah, was there
so
woman
yeah.
versus woman versus machine.
Yeah, so we are the lead actor in my film, Uninvited. We kind of realized, one, we lived quite close to each other, and two, that we actually had a lot in common. And so we sort of stayed in touch since we filmed. There was an application actually for an SBS like funded thing, and so
it's like a pitch, SBS pitch.
Yeah, like it's called Digital Originals.
Okay.
So it's 4 or 6 part TV show. Quite short episodes. She has always been a fan of like telling stories sort of based on older people, particularly older Australians. And so we also have the shared background of both having family from Newcastle, which is like 2 hours north of Sydney. It was a steelworks, like it's a working class town, but now has
gentrified
incredibly so in the last couple of years. So like it's but it's really interesting because you do have the older generation, but you have, I mean, and they're uni as well. There's a lot of younger people coming. It's a coastal town, so you sort of have that beachy surfer vibe. You have that very old working class, very old school vibe. You have like a really thriving queer community there as well, because a lot of the small towns around are quite conservative, so a lot of people flock there. It's just like a melting pot of all different people and places, and it's just become incredibly interesting. And another thing that we were also sort of encountering in terms of writing is this whole rise of like AI and stuff and like different things that and how that's sort of impacting writers. And I was like, I would love to not really look at AI specifically, but just like robots and just sort of the automation of things, and like when, you know, things are automated, even though it does, like how it sort of benefits, you know, it serves the greater good, but there are the few people that sort of do get left behind, do lose their jobs, etc., etc. And so we were like, Newcastle's sort of the perfect place to explore that, because
I'd love to learn more about Newcastle.
Yeah, we have like, there's just so much change going on there, and it's like it's really interesting to see how different people respond to it. And she actually lived there for a little bit, so I've never lived there, but used to go there all the time and like still do. And so yeah, we sort of had this idea of this, I call her female Harrison Ford. She's really grumpy. And like Amelia's very sweet, like she's grumpy, but I'm like, no, she needs to be a fucking bitch. She needs to be grumpy. She needs to be angry. But anyway, she runs this cafe kind of begrudgingly.
Grumpily.
Is kind of happy to retire, then finds out that they're like gonna, with the place that like her business, instead of like keeping on all the staff, they're getting rid of them and making a robot run cafe. And she was like, well, that's not on. And then so because she's so stubborn, she's like, nah, I'm staying. That's stupid. But they're so, her and sort of her like kind of band of misfits really are like, they now sort of have beef basically with like robots. Like it's just so they're
cool.
like,
So we'll never use ChatGPT here.
yeah, they like said it like they're sort of, and the people sort of setting them up, because there's kind of, yeah, I feel like there's so many different stereotypes around, sort of like battlers, like this kind of like working class, very like
anti-technology kind of thing.
Yeah, anti-technology. I mean, like battlers, like especially in Australian literature as well, it's like you suffer and that's what you do. Like that's like you suffer, you work, like that's to have a better life, to the, you know, like contribute, like that's what you do. And then for this idea for like a robot to do all that suffering but like effortlessly is kind of infuriating.
That's very interesting.
Cool.
And so, but then there's also like on the flip side, there's so many stereotypes about like a kind of like a tech bro, or like somebody who's like, you know, AI is kind of their thing, or like somebody who's keen for like progress and automation and like moving forward.
I would love
forward.
to see those two kind of people put in the same room.
Like it's kind of, they're almost different species in a way. Like it's so sort of, we didn't make it through to this next round of digital originals, but we're really liking the idea so much. So there's like different avenues that we're exploring, and we have a lovely friend who is he's actually written a few books, and we're helping him with his proof of concept for a TV show, and so we're going to see if we can sort of get him onto helping Al. So yeah, it's really sweet. We met him doing another proof of concept. He's written so much. He's really cool.
I'm learning so much like screen terms today.
So he's
treatment, flick, proof of concept.
We should have a glossary at the
a lot of
end.
terminology.
Glossary
I'm learning
of
so
terms.
much. I think you really need to have like a tech bro or tech sis character to represent the
We
side.
do, yeah. We've got like,
Feel free to consult me. I mean,
Okay.
I'm technically a little bit tangentially involved in the tech space.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
cool.
Well, we're
My
dinosaurs.
favorite genre is tech satire. I love
Yeah,
people
like-
making fun of us.
Yeah.
You're, I feel like, in the minority because
Oh,
I think
that's cool.
sometimes they can get a little bit upset.
They get so defensive. They're just like a bunch of fucking losers.
They're like, what do you mean? We're not nerds.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Wow, that's so fun. Thanks so much
Yeah,
for
that
sharing.
sounds awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
I think one question that I wanted to ask you, and I'm sure many listeners are interested as well, is how did you get started on your filmmaking or writing journey?
Well, I always wrote, like as a kid. I was always
Yeah.
obsessed with books and writing. And it wasn't until I went to university and did a film studies degree that I was like, oh, well, I love books and writing and I love film. Why not try writing a screenplay? So I wrote my first screenplay probably in my second or third year of university, and it was just a 10-minute short film. It's a little comedy about a guy who like hits his head after a drunken night out and he wakes up with like this weird speech impediment where he can't stop rhyming everything.
I
So
love
it's
that.
very ridiculous.
That's horrific.
Poor
guy.
It was a silly little film that I eventually shot in my last year
nice.
of university. And yeah, I guess as the more I got into the film industry as a script supervisor, the more I realized how attainable screenwriting and having films made was.
Attainable, really?
Well, just because you meet a lot of people who
are
want to
doing
make
this,
films.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
And if you have a whole portfolio of scripts, you just kind of trade them off and you can like
Yeah.
either write for other people, which I have done for friends, or, you know, you can just sell your scripts if you're lucky or just give them away if you want to. So it's not like I ever set out, you know, wanting to write scripts. And it is very different from writing prose or poetry or whatever. It's more just that it was a marriage of these two things that I love. And it's really fun getting to watch something you've written get made,
Yeah,
even if
that's
it's not
true.
what you expected.
I feel like it never turns out as you expected.
Well, I was
Yeah.
going to say that because, like, yeah, when things are not, like when it's not how you expect it to turn out or different things like that. Yeah, what that experience is like for you. Is that something you
Yeah.
get used to, or is it always still a bit
I
jarring?
have to get
Well,
used to it.
I
Every
have
project
been
is
burned a
different.
few times.
Oh, no.
Like I've had some really like scripts that I really loved that were made into films that I really hate. So I always prefer to share my scripts over the finished products. I have a few coming out this year that I'm like, fingers crossed they're actually good, and some of them are friends of mine, so I do have faith that
Yeah.
there'll be ones that I'm really proud of. But at the moment I'm just concentrating on getting more film credits anyway, so it's like, you know, I'm not even bothered if they don't turn out well. It's just
At least your
really
name is
fun.
there.
Yeah, it's a credit and it's
Yeah.
fun. It's just good to get your stuff out there and get it made, because I think that there's no point in a script if it just exists as a script. I kind of compare it to sheet music. Like,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
so
a
that's
good
kind of the end goal
comparison.
in a way. But
Yeah,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I feel like as a writer, you do get a bit more creative control. As
Definitely.
you go through an
Yeah.
editor, but then in the end, it's still your own words, at least
True.
Yeah.
mostly. So
Definitely.
the way you write it is what people see in the end. I guess, yeah, I've never really thought about that before. So thanks for drawing that comparison.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
I mean,
great.
film is such a business that you are really at the hands of the producers and the filmmakers. And so writing this action film and the other film that I did for this company, I feel like a sellout. I don't mind it because I'm getting paid to do what I love. But it is very much like, you know, the whole kill your darlings thing, because I'm very proud of my first drafts. And then by the third or fourth draft, I'm like, all the things that I loved most about this
Oh,
have had to
no.
be removed.
Yeah.
So you have to get your head around that. But I don't
Yeah.
have, you know, I don't have too much pride that I get bummed out by it.
There's always the next project as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like one day I will write something on spec, which by the way, on spec just means
What
like
does that
something
mean?
it means it's not commissioned. So like
Yeah.
just a script that you have invented that's your own idea.
Yeah, you're not
Original
given
idea.
any sort of treatment or
So I
On
plan
spec.
to write something on spec that I really care about, and then maybe have that produced myself.
Yeah.
That's in the future at some point, but at the moment I don't mind being a hired gun because I really enjoy it.
That's a good way to start, I think.
Yeah.
And establish a footing.
It's fun.
I do have a question though. Like when the producers or the directors tell you to change something, if it's for an artistic reason or for like a monetary reason, like would you feel better if it's an artistic reason? If they say like, I feel like you need to change this because the character's motivation is not so clear, rather than we can't achieve this scene because it's too expensive. Would you feel better?
I much prefer the monetary side of things.
Really?
Yeah, because
I think criticism's hard.
yeah, when it's artistic,
Yeah.
usually I've spent the time and I've spent the energy to make it all make sense and bring these characters to life. So when they come back disagreeing with me, I just flat out think that they're wrong.
Okay, I see.
And a lot of the time it's very political. So for this action film that I just wrote, basically the whole plot is just she's on holidays, she's seeing her sister for the first time in ages. They're Americans who are now in England, in the countryside. And basically just this gang of guys come into the house when one of them's alone and kills the sister. And they wanted it to be like a robbery gone wrong type situation. And so the whole plot is a revenge spree of our main character getting revenge for her sister who's been killed. And I just adamantly thought that the guys needed to be much darker and much more sinister than just robbers who accidentally kill this girl.
You go into a house in the countryside too, like it's not like it seems
because
very
otherwise
intentional.
Our protagonist is just going on this killing spree for guys who might not even deserve to get killed off.
Yeah.
And so when I wrote the first draft, I wrote in, not super explicitly, but I wrote in like a human trafficking plot.
Okay.
Where maybe they were targeting these girls to eventually sell them, which was much more sinister. I added a threat of sexual violence, firstly, just because I think it's realistic.
Yep.
Secondly, again, it just makes them more evil, thus making it more satisfying to have all these horrible guys killed off. And they read the first draft, they really enjoyed it, but the producers were like, maybe let's get rid of this human trafficking plot. And I really did put my foot down and I was like, I firmly believe that this makes it a stronger story all throughout. And I did win that battle. So that got to stay in. I changed some things to tone it down a little bit. But that was the only thing that I came back and fought, because if it's like, hey, I want to blow up this house, and they're like, mate, we only have $100.
Yeah.
There's no point fighting that. So those kind of conversations I never really tried to fight against.
Yeah, I think you get better at knowing what battles to pick as well. The more experience you get, and the greater understanding of the industry. Like you know that it's nothing personal, it's just money, or it's but when you like you say, you know your work and you know what makes it strong, then you know what to fight for as well.
Yeah, totally. And they've hired you trusting that you have that creative sensibility.
They can't.
So they should respect you when you have something to say in that regard.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, that was super cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, it's fun.
What about you, Emily?
Well, similarly, always loved writing. Always really liked reading first. And then we had to, in year 2, rewrite Jack and Jill with a different ending. Yeah, I remember the teacher really liking it, and then I think she ended up reading it because I was like, I don't want to read it. And then I was like, oh, this is fun. This is nice to have things perform. So then I guess that is sort of where the sort of film element of it started, like it being performed. I know things are read aloud, like that's literally how we met. But yeah, this whole sort of thing of things kind of coming to life. And then I think as I got older, I still really enjoyed writing short stories, learning about short stories, loved English and like different languages as well, but kind of in my spare time pivoted to really enjoying watching movies and TV shows and like really having lots of unhealthy obsessions with different characters, which I won't name. So I guess just the interest in terms of like consuming kind of became more film and TV. And then when it came to like leaving school, I was like, I want to do writing, want to write a book, want to do things like that. And so I did want to study creative writing, but then I was also really kind of intrigued by filmmaking. I'll hedge my bets. I'll do a double major, film and writing. If I don't end up liking film, I can ditch it. Like I was actually talking about it on set last week with a friend, and we were saying like once you sort of know what you want to do, it kind of clicks in a way, not really in a way that you can describe, but you sort of just know that that's what you want to do, and you know that you sort of find fulfillment from it. And I think with film in particular, especially if you're in like the production side of things, you know, you're working long hours, there isn't a lot of money in it, there's often a lot of sacrifices that have to be made, you know, artistically, like personally.
Yeah.
So you know, if you're still enjoying it after all that, it's sort of, I think like it is the right thing for you to be doing. So then, yeah, I think I just enjoyed it more and more. Yeah, it's sort of just been a continuation, and I'm keen to hopefully do it a bit more like in the future, especially a lot more writing. Like I'm enjoying being on sets and stuff, but I do miss not writing as much as I used to. And so I'd love to get into that a little bit more. That's the nice thing about film as well, is there are so many roles. So if you aren't 100% set on, I want to be a writer, I want to be a director, you've
just
got,
get involved in a space and see what's available.
You've got different things that you can pursue.
That's so cool. Should we talk about maybe film adaptations next?
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
This is a good topic because there's that saying floating around, the book is always better. Well, that's obviously not necessarily true always, but it is like a common thing that people say. So like what are some examples that you guys can think of where the book is definitely better than the film, and why? And also if there are any like reverse examples where the film is actually better than the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do actually agree with the statement, which is shocking because I am such a film lover.
Yeah, you're like,
but
well, if anyone would disagree, it's definitely you.
But I do have a bit of a belief that I think you should always watch the movie first. Because
interesting.
Because there is no enjoyment that's going to be removed from you reading the book. But I do think that if you read the book first, there is a high chance you'll get disappointed
I have
by
found
the movie.
that you're more disappointed that way around than film to book. Okay, jokes, poor things. I'll watch the movie and I'll come back.
No. Not trying to dissuade anyone. It's too late for you, Emily.
I finish the book eventually. It'll happen, but yeah. It's,
so, an interesting one which you actually didn't like, Fengling, but we've spoken about The Book Thief, which I loved reading.
Oh, God.
You didn't like the book?
I mentioned it in one of our previous episodes, and it's one of my least favorite books of last
which
year.
Is hilarious to me because I loved it to bits.
I loved it too. I read it a while ago, but
I said in that episode that I'm gonna get into trouble for not liking that book.
Okay, and I'm totally
this is the trouble. Held to account. Yeah,
absolutely.
I didn't like the writing style.
But just to say that the film is like not even worth.
Really?
Well, I remember.
Watching? No.
I remember reading
very
the
average,
book, watching the
average.
movie in kind of quick succession, being like, it's just and just feeling like something was missing.
Another book that came to mind, and I love the movie, so it's no criticism of the movie, but I read The Help after watching the movie.
Yeah.
And I absolutely adored it. And it's just a classic example of like, I think the movie couldn't have been any better than it was. But in the book, it just goes into so much more depth. You get to know the characters so much better, and you want to know all the details of everything, that you just do get more fulfillment from reading the book versus watching the movie.
Yeah.
So I think that happens a lot.
I'm so glad you brought up The Help. I love that movie. I've never read the book. It sounds like I really should.
Well, it's a brilliant adaptation. Like it feels the
such a good
same.
movie,
The feeling that you get from the book is the same feeling you get from the movie, which I think is an absolute success of an adaptation. It's just it goes into more detail.
Right.
I have an example of a movie that I prefer over the book. And it is a very famous movie. It's Arrival by Denny.
I've heard that's an incredible movie.
Yeah, Denny
Villeneuve.
Villeneuve.
However you say it.
I was going to bring up Blade Runner later, so
I don't know how to pronounce it. Villeneuve.
Oh, I haven't read the book, but it's such an interesting plot.
Such a good movie. It's
Lots
one of my
going
favorite
on
movies. The original is a short story called The Story of Your Life by Ted Chiang. And he's an American sci-fi writer, and it's a sci-fi short story.
Cool.
And I much prefer the movie because even though the sci-fi ideas are the same in the story and in the movie, Ted Chiang's writing style is like very lean and like very focused on like the sci-fi ideas, and there's not as much emotion. But with the movie, like with the cinematography, the imagery, and the music, really just added that much more emotional punch behind the same idea.
Yeah.
And that's why I love the movie so much.
Yeah.
I have
Awesome.
another one that's a short story
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah.
And I do think that short stories lend themselves really well to movie adaptations
I do
because they
too.
just have to be physically shorter.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect time.
Yeah.
So my one was Stephen King's. He wrote a short story called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption
Yeah,
that then
yeah.
got made into the Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
And I think that the movie is better because it's one of the rare examples where they actually added more plot into the movie
And it made sense.
than they
It
do with the
fit.
short
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
There's much more depth. There's like, I don't know how well you know the movie, but there's a character that comes in kind of 3/4 through it who is witness to the fact that our protagonist
I
is
remember that
innocent.
in the movie. Yeah.
That's not
Not
in
in the
the
book.
short
Oh,
story at all.
wow.
So
I didn't
things
know.
like that. And like Stephen King's short stories are probably the same length as a lot of authors' regular stories.
Yeah,
Like to say that
true.
it's short is not necessarily
Oh, God.
fair.
No.
But the movie is just done so brilliantly. Morgan Freeman, just as a casting decision, is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Tim Robbins as well just absolutely kills it. So I think sometimes if you have brilliant actors, it does
Really
just
adds.
elevate it to the next level.
Yeah,
Because
Yeah.
you
it
really,
does.
really believe
right
those
people.
people are real.
Yeah, the right people. Well, not that I've read the short story that Blade Runner's based off, but I can imagine that a lot of people speak. Yeah, in terms of those movies, they kind of just take it to another level. Yeah, it's so disappointing in the reverse, like when the sci-fi movie is so disappointing in comparison to the book. Like, very random
Oh,
example,
yeah.
but I remember reading Ready Player One and loving it.
Ah.
And then going to the movies and being like,
Oh my God.
It
you
was-
didn't like
it
it?
I worked like
average.
a 1 day a week casual job. I was like, I wasted my money.
Nah.
What have I no?
I have not read the book.
So
I liked the movie.
Did you?
It wasn't bad.
I haven't
was
read.
mad.
I haven't read the book. Maybe that's why.
Oh,
I think
no.
that actor freaks me out a little bit. Like his eyes are a little bit too intense.
Don't remember.
For me.
I just remember it was like 1/10 of the book's
I see, I
detail,
see.
personality.
Yeah,
The
sure.
book was a lot more kind of graphic and explicit and dark. I don't know. I just found that it was kind of glossed over a lot of sort of the darkness in it, which I think was what made it interesting. In terms of movies that are better, I have such a soft spot for the Harry Potter movies and less of a soft
Yeah,
spot
you
for
have
the
to bring
books.
those up.
Less
Yeah.
of a soft spot for the books than I do.
I completely
movies.
agree. I didn't finish the fifth one. I'm sorry. It's a
I'm
big
up to
confession,
number
but
6.
the
I'm
fifth
up to
one
number
was
6.
so long and
6 is
boring.
great. 6 is great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
agree.
movie's
The sixth
actually
one
not that
is
memorable, yeah.
The movie was just too
Daniel
dark.
Radcliffe was like my OG crush. I don't know if that's just influenced
Daniel
at all.
Radcliffe.
I know,
Come
but now
on.
he's kind of
really
yeah, weird. A little bit weird. Now look,
Tom Felton all the way.
True. With the hair gel.
Neville is where it's at.
The hair gel. Oh,
Yeah.
true. Like, yeah.
He definitely had a glow up.
Neville was truly slept on, and then in the last movie,
Yeah,
came for us all in
I
multiple ways.
know. Well, I want to shout out one of my favorites,
Yeah.
The Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Oh my god!
Never watched
How did I
it.
not
Because it's a children's book. It's a Roald Dahl book.
Oh, right.
How did I not?
But
mention
Wes
that?
Anderson, what he does with that, he really does just elevate it with the
My
stop
God.
motion because it's a stop motion
Something-
animated.
I'm watching it tonight.
movie.
I
Film.
love animation.
I've
love
watched
stop
it 30
motion.
times.
It's
No joke. It's one of my
absolutely
all-time
brilliant.
favorite
I need to watch
films.
it.
And they've added like songs and they've added
Yeah.
these set pieces. George Clooney and Meryl Streep are
Like,
just
come on.
absolutely
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Speaking of stop motion, isn't that what happened with Coraline? Neil Gaiman's
Yeah.
Coraline.
Yeah,
the
I
movie is
mean,
fantastic.
Yeah,
I did really like the movie. It's
I
very
liked the
creepy.
movie. Loved the book as well. The book is definitely darker than the film. The filmmaker's job is to be creative. Like, it's not a news report. You're not
Yeah,
just like
exactly.
taking
Copying
what and
it.
just taking
Yeah.
it. You know, you've got to
Yeah,
add
it's
your
not
own
a copy paste
flair.
job.
Mm.
Yeah.
No, you got to add your own flair and your own style to it.
I think that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much to Emily and Anya for being wonderful guests. I hope
Thank you.
our
Thanks for having
listeners-
us.
I hope our listeners have enjoyed listening as much as we've enjoyed our conversation. This is the podcast Licensed Poetics. I'm your host, Fan Ling. Again, thank you to everyone, and we'll see you in our next episode.
Enjoy.
Bye,
Go read
everyone.
those
Thank
awful,
you.
horrible books.
Do it.